For those who don't know me, I am Ken Millage. I'm the president of the Scottish Society of Central Pennsylvania, and I welcome you to this 67th annual Burns Night celebration for our society. It would have been number 69, but we had to cancel the last couple, as everyone knows. I'd like to introduce the people up front with me. These are the officers and board members of the Scottish Society of Central Pennsylvania. We have David Smith, our treasurer, Jen Gardner, our secretary, Bill Gable is our piper, Heather Sigler is our chaplain, our directors are Fred Haight, Dan Marish, Marsha Wallace Shore, Shannon Smith, who also serves as our webmaster, and Dr. Kathleen White. John Goodrich, who's our vice president, could not be with us tonight. If all of you would like to take your seats, you can now do that. I see many familiar faces and quite a few new faces as well. Now, I've attended, about 30 Burns nights, and I know I'm somewhere in the middle of the pack in terms of the number attended. But I'd also like just get a sense of who's new. So if you would, just by raising your hands, who's new to this Burns Night, new to coming to our Central Pennsylvania Scottish Side Burns Night? Wow, thank you. There's a lot of people who are new. Now, and then secondly, how about anybody who is attending their first Burns Night ever, regardless of whether it's here or elsewhere? Oh, a lot of the same people. Thank you very much. We welcome everyone tonight. We are celebrating Robert Burns, but we're also want to celebrate some special people in our society. A couple years ago, we did, for the first time ever, award lifetime memberships to two of our longtime members. And tonight we want to do that one more time. And this one is for the Goodser family. And tonight we have Esme and Kim Goodser with us. Unfortunately, Graham passed away recently. But Esme and Kim have other family members with them from as far away as Australia. If Esme and Kim would be willing to come forward, I have something for them. If they would rather, I can walk back to them. That says, this certificate is gratefully awarded to the Goodser family in recognition and appreciation for the dedication and contributions you have made toward the success and growth of the Scottish Society of Central Pennsylvania during your many years of service. On behalf of the Scottish Society members, the Board of Directors thanks you and grants you lifetime membership in the Society given at this Burns Night. So, Kim, thank you. Thank you to the whole thing. So, now I ask our chaplain, Heather Sigler, to come forward.
I was prowling around on the internet this afternoon and looking for some information about the Selkirk Grace. And I learned two interesting things. This is usually attributed to Burns having written it. Apparently, it's circulated throughout Scotland in several other versions before it fell into the hands of Burns. He used it and read it at the home of the Earl of Selkirk. And it was so impressed, the Earl was so impressed with it that it picked up the name Selkirk from the fact that it was used in his home. So if you look at the front cover of your program, we'll join together into the Selkirk Grace. Some have meat and cannot eat, and some might eat but want it. But we have meat and we can eat. So let the Lord be thanked. Amen.
the phone now.
And now the piper's job is done, the haggis is presented. But we must pay the piper.
Slangeva! Slangeva!
Slangeva!
Slangeva! Slangeva!
And Slangeva, Wishkanea, the water of life. And I thank you, you may take your leave.
It's a really good experience. Yeah.
Fair far, your honor, staunchly face. Great chieftain of the pudding race. Upon them all you talk your face. Ange, right, fair, we'll wear the idea of grace. As long as me are. The groaning trencher. Your praise like a distant hill. Your tin would help them in times. While through your pores the stew dews like amber bees. His knife, see a rustic labor knife, and he cut you up with a ready slight, gushing it, trenching into his bright like Oni Dick. And then, oh, what a glorious sight. Warm, raking, rich. Then, horn for horn, they stretch and strive, till tack the hindmost on they drive. Till all their wheels will kites be live like drops. Then our goodman must arrive. Thank it, Holmes. Is there is French ragout, or olio with swat stew, or fricassee would make her spew, with perfect scunner, looks down with sneering, scornful view. Sick of that. What is it? See him over his felkish trash. And I need more. His spindle, shank, a good whiplash. Isn't even it. Through bloody field, blood and field to dash. Oh, how I knew it. Mark, the rustic haggis fed. The trembling earth resounds his tread. Clap in his while he need a blood, and he'll make hands and heads and arms. Thieves like strops. Look at that. Pops of thristle. His power is what make mankind your care, and dish them out their bill of fare. Oh, Scotland wants no skinking ware that dops and nuggets. But if ye wish her grateful prayer, gie her a haggis.
But prior to that, at every good Burns supper, there has to be a toast. And a toast means you really should get on your feet. So even if you don't have something alcoholic in front of you, if you will be upstanding, so raise your glasses as we toast the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., thank you. Thank you very much. Little editing here. And the not yet anointed, but who will be anointed in May, King Charles of the United Kingdom and Scotland. Cheers.
Dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I think we're probably far enough along in the dinner and the dessert tonight that we'll get on with the next part of the program, which is the immortal memory to Robert Burns. And I get the privilege of doing that this evening. I think I've done lots of different things in the society over the years, but I've never done one of the immortal memories. So, bear with me as we see what I do. As I think of memories, I think of them going in several different directions. There are those which include, what we remember, basically the facts of the situation. Then there are those that explain why we remember. These may be the reasons we have a personal connection with something. And finally, I think of maybe how we remember something. What do we do to celebrate a memory? And I'd like to take a quick look at Robert Burns in light of those types of memories. And let's begin with the what type memories, the facts. And I think that's the simplest part of a memory. You can probably get those pretty easily. Do a Google search. Or if you're old-fashioned, you can go read an autobiography or a biography of a person. And some of the facts of Burns' life are very well known. He was born in Alloway, Scotland in the mid-1700s in a cottage that his father built. His parents were tenant farmers on land that Robert grew up on. When Burns was 25 years old, his father died. And Robert and his brother took over the farm, but it turns out they weren't very good business people. And so the farm just didn't survive very well. Burns started writing poetry, and by 1786, when he was 27 years old, he was really a superstar in Scotland, known for his poetry. We also know that Robert Burns married Gina Moore, but it took twice before he actually got married to her. The first time he tried, her parents tore up the marriage contract. After he was a superstar, they agreed that he could get married. And they got married in 1788 and moved to Dumfries, where they lived for the rest of their lives. Burns is also well known for having a few women on the side, as they sometimes say, in addition to his wife, Jean. And those other women seem to steer his life in certain directions, but also his poetry in a lot of those directions. Burns died in 1796 of rheumatic heart condition. And on the day that he was buried, Jean gave birth to the 9th of their children. So that's sort of the quick facts of Robert Burns' of his life. But now let's look at some of the why reasons for why we remember Robert Burns. While these may include a love of his writing, or an agreement or disagreement with his political leanings, or just a general love for Scotland that he embraced, they may be more personal for us, and that's where I'd like to go now. And I guess I'd ask you the question tonight of all of us sitting here. Why are you here tonight celebrating Robert Burns? What is it about Burns that causes you to come out on what could have been a very cold and wintry evening? Turns out to be a nice one. I can offer some suggestions that I came up with, and perhaps it's just that it's Burns night. What else would you do? You're going to be here if there's a Burns night in the area. Or maybe you love bagpipe music, or wearing a kilt or a kilted skirt, and there aren't a lot of opportunities around to do that. Or were you one of those people that during an address to a haggis, you sit and you wait, and then the line comes and you can join in the chorus of warm, reeking rich. Maybe you enjoy the toast to the lads and lassies and just want to see what else is going to be said tonight. And maybe you just like Burns' poetry so much that you want a whole evening of nothing but his poetry and his songs, and that would just make your heart sing. And speaking of singing, I know there's at least one person here who is a big fan of Charlie Zahm and Tad Marks, because I got an email asking me when we were holding our Charlie Zahm concert. So, there are reasons to come to a Burns night. And since I asked you that question, I'm going to ask myself that question. Why am I here? Well, for me, it's all about family. Family connections to Robert Burns. Now, I don't mean in a genealogical sort of way. I mean, if you look at the tartan on the front here, that's Burns' tartan. And if you know, some of you may know, that the Burns clan is a sept of Clan Campbell. And I happen not to be wearing Clan Campbell. I have a Clan Donald tartan on me. So we're probably not a genealogical connection there. But I have a family connection. My wife Janet has a lifelong love for her Scottish heritage. And it was through her that she introduced me to the first Scottish games I ever attended. Now, I knew of bagpipe music, I knew of caber tossing, but I'd never seen him up close and personal before. She also introduced me to Robert Burns. Before her, Burns was probably one of those poets I read sometime in an English class a long time ago, but probably didn't remember at all. I just, that's one of those poets. And then once we were married, she joined this Scottish society. And pretty soon, she was giving speeches up front, toasting the lads, reciting poetry. So family memories, that's part of what I have for Robert Burns. And recently I was asked, what's my earliest memory of a Burns night supper? Well, I could say it's all the celebrations, it's the piping in of the haggis, and I do remember those things. but mostly I remember Janet giving her speeches. And I also remember our son Brian, when he was about 10 years old, wearing his custom-made kilt, his long-sleeve white shirt, his bow tie, sitting there and, out here, probably more interested in whatever video game he had in his hands at the time, but he was here. And I also remember our daughter Mary, 3 or 4 years old, definitely under 5. And we were sitting at a Burns night supper, and the musicians, I don't remember which group now, began playing probably something like a reel. She couldn't sit any longer. She was out of her chair. She was dancing in the aisle during our Highlands step dancing, and it was, it was wonderful. And pretty soon, I know there were more people around us watching her than they were listening to the people up front. Family memories. Then there's one more memory that I have, and that is not of Burns night per se. It is of a Burns portrait that we have hanging in our dining room at home. Now, I don't know how many of you have Burns portraits hanging in your dining rooms, but we do. And it's a very special Burns portrait because Janet's father painted it. So we have a family connection, lots of family connections with Burns. So there are memories that just sort of weave through our lives. And now I'd like to go to that third type of memory. And these are the, how do we remember something? What do we do to remember Robert Burns? Well, this evening is one of those. It's probably the fastest one for a lot of us. We go to a Burns night supper. And most of you probably know that the first Burns night supper goes back to 1801. 5 years after Burns' death, a group of his friends got together and had a dinner, haggis, neeps and tatties, and they drank a few grams of whiskey, toasting Burns, reading his poetry, definitely to a haggis, and spent the night, doing that for several hours. And then a little less than 60 years later, on the 100th anniversary of Burns' birthday, there were memorial celebrations all across Scotland celebrating his life. And thus was born the first broad Burns nights. And now January 25th is essentially a national holiday in Scotland. But it's not just in Scotland that they celebrate Burns night. We're here for the 67th time. So a little town across the pond is celebrating Robert Burns. The third type of memory is how do we remember? Oh, I'm sorry, let me skip back to here. I did that one. A good friend of many of the people in this room, Mark Hagenbuch, once told me his vision of what a Burns night supper should be. He says it should be as much Burns as possible. And what he meant by that was read as many Burns poems and sing as many Burns songs as you can possibly fit into the evening. And I agree with Mark that the best way to celebrate Burns is with his own words. And that's what I'd like to do now. I'd like to read a poem that says, this is Burns to us. But how do you pick one Burns poem? It's really difficult. And with that thought, I asked Janet and Mary, what's a good poem? Which one should I pick? And Janet and Mary, or Janet first said, To a Mouse. Yeah, that's a good poem. Burns standing in a plowed field, watching, showing great remorse at watching a mouse in a field, his life all upturned. And one line in that poem reads, "The best laid schemes of mice and men gang off to glee." Well, to a mouse, in my mind, quickly went to a louse. And I'm sure it was just a similarity of names. And To a Louse is a very fun poem. A lady sitting in a church pew wearing a bonnet, as traditional for that time of that period of history. And the people in the pews behind her were not really paying that much attention to the preacher up front. They were watching what was happening on the lady's bonnet. And then I suggested, well, what about My Heart's in the Highlands? And I didn't get a response of, oh, that sounds good, or that sounds, I don't think I'd do that. What I got was a simultaneous recitation of that poem by Janet and Mary. That tells me, we do have connections, when a couple generations can just recite poems from heart. Now, those are 3 good options. A number of others jump out at me. Tam O'Shanter, probably the most famous of Burns' poems in Scotland. It's too long for tonight. I think we'll skip that one. To a Haggis, we've already done that one. Auld Lang Syne, we're going to do that one later. When I think of Auld Lang Syne, I start thinking of other poems that Burns wrote that have become such a part of culture that people know them, but they may not attribute them to any particular author. And the first of those reads, "Oh, my love is like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love is like the melody that's sweetly played in tune." Well, I'm not a Burns historian, and I don't know all of Burns' poems. What I did was I went to a bookcase in our house, and on that bookcase is one of the first presents I ever gave Janet, and that was a book of Burns' poetry. I pulled it off the shelf and sat down and started reading. A cold winter afternoon and a book of Burns and sitting for a couple hours is a great way to spend some time, especially if you're retired. And then I thought, well, maybe it shouldn't be just one poem. Maybe I could do it, based on, similarities of poetry. And I thought it could be a chronology. I could look at early poems, mid poems, and late poems. Burns started writing poetry when he was 15 years old. And one of the very first ones includes, "I dreamed I lay where flowers were springing, gaily in their sunny beam, listening to the wild birds singing by a falling crystal stream." And then later in life, actually quite late in life, Burns wrote a song titled "The Author's Farewell to His Native Country." He also wrote a biographical sketch in which he explained a bit about this poem. He said, "I had taken the last farewell of my few friends. My chest was on the road to Greenock, and I had composed the last song I would ever measure in Caledonia." The end of the verse reads, "Farewell, my friends, farewell, my foes, my peace with these, my love with those. The bursting tears my heart declare, farewell, my bonny banks of air." Well, if we're going to do it chronologically, we probably should look at the last poem Burns ever wrote, 2 days before his death. He was thinking about the nurse who was caring for him on his deathbed. And he wrote, "Fairest maid on Devon banks, crystal Devon, winding Devon, wilt thou lay that frown aside and smile as thou wert wont to do?" Well, there are other themes we could look at. How about all of his poems to the women in his life? Well, there's one that I particularly like, and it's titled, "I Love My Jean." For he said that all through his life, Bonnie Jean was the one he always loved best. And in that poem, he writes, "Of all the airs that wind can blow, I clearly like the west, for there the bonny lassie lives, the lassie I love best. There's wild woods grow and rivers row, and many a hill between, but day and night my fancy's flight is ever with my Jean." During the last decade of Burns' life, he became quite political in his philosophy and in his writings. He was a Jacobite. He was very much a Scottish patriot. He was also a supporter of the French Revolution. And he wrote a lot of poetry about his beliefs. And one song from that period, and I should say I've been reading a lot of songs throughout this, but I'm reading the verses because, some of you know it's much better for me to read the verses than to sing the songs. We'll leave those for Charlie and Tad when we want to hear the music done well. But this song is called A Man's a Man for All That. And it goes, then let us pray that come it may, as come it will for all that sense and worth or all the earth shall bear the gree and all that, for all that and all that. It's coming yet for all that man to man the world o'er shall brothers be for all that. Burns was writing that he hoped all people could be brothers and that one day society would rid itself of hierarchy and everybody could get along. Well, that's a lot of choices. But I probably had a poem in my mind to begin with. And that's the one I would like to read. It's one where Burns expresses his love for his native land. The beauty of the land, the people, the joy that those things bring him. I've already mentioned the title. It was one that Janet and Mary started reciting. And it's, my heart's in the highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the highlands, a chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the highlands, wherever I go. Farewell to the highlands, farewell to the north, the birthplace of valor, the country of worth. Wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the hills of the highlands, forever I love. Farewell to the mountains, high covered with snow. Farewell to the straths and green valleys below. Farewell to the forests and wild hanging woods. Farewell to the torrents and loud pouring floods. My heart's in the highlands, my heart is not here. My heart's in the highlands a chasing the deer, chasing the wild deer and following the roe. My heart's in the highlands, wherever I go. So what do we think Burns would think about all of us gathered here, more than 200 years after his death, extolling his life, reading his poetry? Well, perhaps he gave us a clue to that in something else he wrote. When he said, "Oh, would some power the gifty give us to see ourselves as others see us." And that's the immortal memory. Now, I encourage everyone, thank you.
Going to proceed with the toast to the lads and the toast to the lasses. I'm going to start first with the toast to the lasses. Men will all be able to sympathize with me, because with this build, I should be speaking for all men, or at least this hairline. For your Burns supper, January 28th, 2023, a toast to the lasses. And I hope I can meet the high expectations of those in the room with Scots blood running through their veins. For those non-Scots here in the room, tonight, I hope your blood is mostly Scotch by this part of the program. We're going to have a toast. You want to have something to drink with you, the no line right now for the barman. So you have about 25 minutes, and then we'll be ready for the... No, I'm not going to go 25 minutes. Loosen up a wee bit now. Loosen up, loosen up. This is the toast part. It's a taste of spirits, a time to enjoy a little levity, a little wit, like the man we honor this evening. Tonight, as I said, I represent the men in the room, the lads, and a time to toast the lasses. Not roast the lasses. I'm going to keep it pretty straight. I want to give them the honor that they deserve. I don't think that it's controversial that, as most men, our formative years were heavily influenced by women. Our most formative experiences were from our mother. Our first public school teachers were female. And for those of you with older sisters, we learned how much we could get away with and how effective tattletales could be. We learned that from the lasses, from the girls. So any complaints about a man's behavior, ladies, you can lay at the feet of these three influences in our lives. As adults, we men courted, cajoled, and flat out lied to a lass until they agreed to become a wife. Yes, we complain about this relationship. We complain about the overspending. Look how much I saved today.
I did.
Kathleen, I wanted her seated on the other end. The jarring comments. You're not wearing that, are you? It's pretty easy for tonight. We prefer to say FI, fashion impaired. The questions that you're absolutely afraid to answer. Do you think Charlie's wife is attractive? She has a nice complexion. She was in autumn, you know. Oh, and then after my Kohl's cash, it was only $17. And eventually, yes, there was an effective shopping day. Eventually, we're blessed with a daughter or daughters. From the very first, they learn to wrap a man around their finger. We protect them. We eventually let them go. But we still always watch over them. We worry over them, no matter what their age, no matter what their situation. May they all be daddy's girls. May they all be daddy's girls. Burns fathered over 13 children, and though he died young, surely felt the bond that one holds with daughters. He was intent that his writings would preserve the Scottish vernacular. He wanted his daughters to learn and appreciate the Scots traditions. But back to the lasses, the ones we courted, cajoled, and flat out lied to. After 3 years of convincing deceit, I married an Irish lass. So Irish her name really is Shannon. So Irish her favorite breakfast cereal really is Lucky Charms. She likes the emeralds of the Emerald Island.
True.
And she got a really good bargain on it. And then she pulled out her Kohl's cash. She loves Irish dance. The Scots, though, have always welcomed her with open arms as an Irish cousin. And after all the molding and training she has tried to force upon me, I still have shortcomings, hard to believe. Lads, we have shortcomings. But that is their lot in life, in all eras and in all families. The lasses have to put up with us. Burns states in Tam O'Shanter, and getting full, that is drunk, getting full. And getting full and mighty happy, we think not on the long Scots miles, the bogs, pools, breaches, and stiles that lie between us and our home, where sits our sulky, sullen wife, gathering her forward like a gathering storm, nursing her anger to keep it warm. Perhaps they glory in silent suffering, not always silent. But the truth is, whatever you give a woman, they'll make it greater. As is well known, give her a house, she'll give you a... You're supposed to say home. As is well known, give her a house, she'll give you a... Good. Give her groceries, she'll give you a meal. Good. Give her a smile, she'll give you her even after you've courted, cajoled, and flat out lied to her. And that, gentlemen, is why I'm not going to give the lasses anything but honor tonight. I could find no finer words than those written by Burns himself. And nature swears, the lovely dears, her noblest work she classes. Her prentice hand she tried on man, and then she made the lasses. There's naught but care on every hand in every hour that passes. What signifies the life of man? And 'twere not for the lasses, the sweetest hours that e'er I spend are spent among the lasses. Men, let's all be upstanding. Let's all be upstanding. All men be upstanding. So seize your drinks and raise your glasses. I propose a toast. Here's to the glasses. Cheers. Slanchama.
Right then, my turn. Ladies, listen up. It's only right we toast the lads because they help us so. Without them, sad would be our lot along the path we go. They take us on such scenic trips to sites remote and wide. Lads never ask directions. They trust their inner guide. They save us from the stress and strain of deciding yes or no. They always know what's best for us and are pleased to tell us so. And aren't we glad they're here to put in their 2 cents and share their sound financial ken to improve our fiscal sense? For when the lads ask us to dance, it gives our hearts a lilt, for celebrations are superb when they add a flash of kilt. Yes, the laddies cherish and protect us and help us reach our goals. With a wink, a smile, their helping hand, their music to our souls. But we love them for their honor, for their courage and their pride. Indeed, there's nothing we cannot do with a good lad by our side. So lasses, stand and raise your glasses. Oh, Ken, I forgot mine. Can you bring it? Thanks, honey.
Nothing you cannot do without a lad by your side.
Exactly. So, lasses, stand and raise your glasses to toast each noble lad. For not only are they our heroes, they're heroes in plaid.
The night was falling, here, the pipes are calling, loudly and proudly calling down through the glen. Where the hills are sleeping, now feel the blood a-leaping, high as the stream. Everybody, dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dancing, and I lead you all wherever you may be. And I lead you all in the dancing heat. Well, I danced for the scribes and the Pharisees. They wouldn't dance, they would not follow me. I danced for the fishermen, James and John, they came with me. And the dance went on. Here we go. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance.